You have made me indestructible because in you I no longer end in myself. The words of Pablo Neruda. And we read that actually over Clarence's body just before he was cremated a couple of weeks ago.
May Clarence's example of life, personhood, and all that he was lead us to allow graciousness and generosity to live out in our lives also.
I've had the pleasure to work with Clarence for the last 4 years at St. Mary's Care Center. Our loved and cherished friend touched the lives of so many residents and changed the way they lived. Clarence made a difference in the lives of those around him, even the changing the way we felt and learned. During the last election, he even made a change in how many of us voted. It's true. A lot of Republicans got turned.
I'd like to bring up our next speaker who has done a tremendous job of getting Clarence's words in the media, both locally and nationally over many, many years. A warm welcome to John Nichols.
Well, you know it's getting rough when the people from the care center do the best eulogies. But that was Clarence. All right. Of course, this doesn't adjust, so I'll get my technology right. Maggie. And John, and Laurel, and Julie, and Susan. Clarence loved you all so much, and he talked about you all so much, and children, and grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and you know, it's such an odd thing because, and I just begin with this, and then we'll talk about some other stuff, but Clarence was so known. That's right, my friend, you're in the right place. It's okay. Generation upon generation called forward. But Clarence was so known for his politics, and that's a good thing. But I wish that all of the conservatives who talk about family values could have seen Clarence and his love for his family and his adorance of everyone in his family, how much he cared for you. So I'm honored to be with you. And friends, brothers, sisters, comrades, I loved Clarence Kailin. And I love you, each and every one of you, because you are the heart and the soul of the great solidarity that Clarence built in our community, our country, and our world. We are gathered tonight not for the solemn task of mourning the loss of a good and courageous man. We are gathered to celebrate the ideals and the movements and the victories that Clarence Kailin gave us. We are gathered to make a commitment to carry forward those ideals, those movements, and those victories. But first, some business. Clarence regularly emailed me with instructions. He did not go to the trouble of a long tagline or subject line. It would usually simply include the word "read" with an exclamation mark. The subject matter could range from recent developments in Palestine to his noting of the fact prior to the 2008 election that in a neighborhood of Fitchburg that he did not think of as particularly democratic, there was a pattern of pumpkins with Obama faces and names carved on them. leading him to believe that the children in their celebration of Halloween were bringing left-wing ideology even to Fitchburg. This, Clarence believed, was perhaps good subject matter for a lengthy newspaper article. When I did not get back to him quickly enough, he would call. Never with one task, always with three, because of course Clarence was first and foremost an organizer. And if he got me on the phone, I knew several things. First, I was coming to St. Mary's to give a talk. Second, I was going to have to do another editorial about Israel and Palestine. And third, I was going to have to mention the word socialism in some context. Clarence was such a good organizer. He knew that movements needed small joys to keep the comrades marching. Clarence liked sugar cookies. He loved cookies. And I want to inform you that one of my absolute favorite moment with Clarence was in one of the 25 events that we did honoring Clarence because it was the last time we would be able to honor Clarence. This is one of the socialist potlucks where we honored him. We were all sitting on stage waiting to talk, and Clarence was there, and of course our speeches were longer. Everyone had spoken, but not everything had been said, but not everyone had said it yet. And so the night was going on, and my daughter, Whitman, who was 3 at the time, was sitting next to Clarence, and she had a box of thin sugar cookies. And she opened it up and she said, "Clarence, you want a cookie?" And Clarence said, "Why, yes, I would love a cookie. And I'll take another." Because, as Clarence explained to Whitman, sometimes when the comrades get going, you really need to take a break for a sugar cookie. And I want to inform you that there are piles of them down the hall. Great, massive piles of delicious cookies. So if it gets a little long tonight, know that Clarence would have snuck out and grabbed a cookie. That's the first piece of business. If you need one, go get it. The second piece of business, and Clarence and I actually spoke about this, bizarrely enough, not in the last year or so. Clarence was talking, Clarence knew that at some point he would pass. In fact, he had several points where he was pretty sure he had passed, only to be wrenched back by his caring family and some amazing doctors. But he said the last time we talked about such things, there were 3 things that he wanted me to tell you, and so I will. And I will tell them to you as Clarence asked. First, we must stop the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, bring all the troops home, slash the military budget, and make America a democracy, not an empire. Second, we must not compromise in the pursuit of economic and social justice. A public option is not enough. We need single-payer national health care for all. And with all due respect to Sarah Palin, Clarence would prefer that it be called socialist medicine. And finally, if you happen to be a socialist, be proud. Socialism is not an ideology. It is a way of life, an expression of a faith in love and solidarity with all humankind. Clarence expressed that love and that solidarity in so many ways. But his epic expression came with a decision, the lonely decision of a young man in his early 20s, not telling his own family, not telling most of his friends, the lonely decision to travel by sea, over mountains, and across deserts to do what the most powerful democracies in the world would not do: to stand alone, if need be, at the side of the Spanish people against the fascism of Hitler, Mussolini, and Franco.
Through this world of toil and snare, if I falter, Lord, who cares? Who will all my burdens share? None but thee, dear Lord, none but thee.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marjorie Nicholson. And her grandfather, she didn't mention, her grandfather was Oliver Law, who was the first African-American to be in command over white troops in the history of the United States. He was a commander of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, the last commander, I think, of the Lincoln Brigade, or second to last. And was recently honored in Chicago a few years ago for his service in Spain. Oliver Law.
Clarence Kailin, the Madison boy who was willing to sacrifice his own life to prevent the fascists from winning in Spain. He was only 22, but he understood that the takeover of Spain by the army and fascists who were aided by the Catholic Church and the ruling class, as well as the non-intervention of the British, Italian, and French governments, and the material support of American corporations meant. It meant, of course, many years of suffering for the people of Spain. It also meant, in Clarence's own words, that World War II was inevitable. That, together with the loss of more than 50 million lives, huge resource waste, and a lot of suffering throughout the world, I learned, he told me, how capitalism works, how it always sustains itself at the expense of the working class. Like many of us gathered here this evening, Clarence was an intellectual. But quite uniquely, he was a real working class intellectual. He worked in many menial jobs. He was involved in many unions. He also offered his house as the headquarters for black striking workers in 1949, mind you, when that meant police and FBI harassment. As Julie, his daughter, said, he's one of the few people on the Madison left who don't just intellectualize. He's a worker, the one who always ends up alone with a broom at the end of the potluck. I think many of us have seen that.
And now I'd like to ask everybody to maybe, close your eyes and imagine who I'm trying to imitate here. I'll try to do this myself. We've got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do. You probably can guess who that was. Clarence Kailin's legacy will be parsed and discussed and defined for many years to come. And it really should be, because we have a great deal to learn from Clarence's life, and there's a lot of work to do. An important part of Clarence's legacy will be his constant interest in learning and his skill as a grassroots teacher. He was also a grassroots learner, I might say. In conversations and interviews that I had with Clarence over the years, beginning 25 years ago or so, he often spoke about things he learned from his family, from his father, from his mother. He sometimes, pretty regularly actually, credited those lessons learned during his very early life with forming his convictions about peace and justice, which remained with him right up to the end.
I don't recall exactly when I met Clarence Kailin the first time, but I got to know him on a more personal level after I joined the South Central Wisconsin chapter of the Socialist Party USA. Like all of us gathered here, I miss Clarence very much. I especially miss his kindness and compassion, his love for his family and friends, his soft-spoken words of wisdom, his vast knowledge, much of it gained through experience. I was impressed by his self-taught intellectual style, which was so complementary to Comrade Robert Kimbrough's more scholarly understanding of the world and how socialism fits into the scheme of things.
Clarence, for many people on the left, brought a reality, brought us into the community, allowed us to meet people, especially that was true with the black community, and also introduced us to the struggles that were going on here, the welfare rights it was called then. I think that it would have been very, very difficult to bring any of that reality to those of us on the campus without Clarence here. But as regards race and racism, that anybody who wished to would learn and receive an education from Clarence about that. And I think that that is sorely missing today and was certainly missing 40 years ago. I think he would like us to reflect on the fact that, especially those of us here from the university community, in 1963, there were 286 black students at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, of which half were probably from abroad. Today, we've advanced. There's about 400 at the University of Wisconsin out of 44,000 students. So I think he would like us to reflect on what amounts to almost complete social and political segregation here in the city of Madison today.
My name is Daniel Kunene. I'd like to be thinking about Clarence's family as I make this presentation. I'd like to be thinking about Maggie, about Julie, about Laurel, sorry, and I certainly, those whose names I don't know, the grandchildren, the great-grands, to them as well. And this, for Clarence, he has a poem, and this poem is entitled Unfinished Business. It was the end of the celebration of your 95th birthday. You sat regally in your chair on the lawn at the gates of heaven. Many thronged around you, broke into our conversation, and reluctantly I walked away, my wife, Marcy, by my side. Up East Gorham Street, some 50 yards or so, I yearned to come back to you, big brother. For those of you who don't know, Clarence was my big brother. To pick up our unfinished conversation, I had seen in your eyes the longing to speak more, to remember more, to reminisce more, chew the cud of our intertwined lives, the nostalgia of shared moments, gifts from the past in our struggle for human love and dignity in South Africa, in Spain, in the USA, in the entire world. More importantly, intimate moments of brother and brother, as you sat regally in your chair on the lawn. Something choked me. My eyes burned. I stopped walking, looked at Marcy, and said, "Can you believe I'm looking back now, wanting to go back?" As I saw you sitting regally in your chair on the lawn, my heart said to me, there was unfinished business between us. But I knew there were others who wanted to touch you, to be touched by you, and I turned and resumed my walk up East Gorham, thinking our conversation will continue another time. But now I have been reminded that life is an unending line of unfinished conversations, unfinished business that is carried from generation to generation to link us together in a tight woven web. You are as large as life itself and will live forever in our hearts. Oh, I nearly forgot, big brother. That beer I promised you, just say the word and I'll sprint and get it for you in no time at all. Thank you.
Clarence Kailin was my friend. He was my friend because he was a soldier who was a freedom fighter. He was my political mentor. He was my community teacher. He was my friend because he was a freedom fighter who never knew when to lay down his weapons. Clarence was my friend because whether he was fighting Franco in Spain and fascists in Spain, or whether he was fighting the Klan and capitalists in Madison, he never lost sight of the enemy. He was my friend because he was like a Madison father figure, a soldier, a freedom fighter, who reminded me of my own dad, who was also a soldier and a freedom fighter, who never knew how to lay down his weapon either until he was finally disarmed in the 1980s. And in a way of speaking, my friend Clarence laid down his weapons of freedom fighting on October 25th. However, he left behind a freedom fighting legacy for you and for me to follow.
Shortly after the beginning of this second intifada in 2000, September of 2000, a number of us here in town, mainly Jewish comrades from then the organization JVP and Freiheit, we got together and we started a Friday vigil on the Library Mall. And Clarence showed up usually early. He showed up so early that he preceded Tom Kozlowski and Sid Podell, which was quite something. But when he came, sometimes we'd be out there a little early by ourselves, and this one September morning, or maybe October, we were standing there alone, and we looked across the Library Mall, and there was this Orthodox Jewish kid, this Hasid, with the black suit and the hat and the payas. And we could see he's stopping people along the way, and we knew immediately who he was. He's proselytizing the peculiar Orthodox sect that proselytizes amongst other Jews to make them more holy. And he saw us, and I think, it was one of those things that I sometimes refer to as a tribal recognition. And there we are, we're holding anti-Zionist and Palestine solidarity signs, but that didn't mean anything to him, because he sees us, and he comes up to us and he says, are you Jews? We say, yeah. And he turns to me and he says, do you want to say the blessing? It was some festival, the festival of Sukkot, right? And he wanted to know if I wanted to say the blessings. And I said, no. He said, why not? I said, because I'm not a believer. So he turned to Clarence and he said, do you want to say the blessings? No, excuse me. He said, are you a believer? And Clarence said, yes, in science. Now, I want to hone in on that. I want to hone in on that and understand what Clarence Kailin meant when he said he believed in science. He said he was believing in scientific socialism, historical materialism, Marxism. Clarence's world was informed by that. Clarence was, yes, at part of his life, a communist, capital C, a member of the CPUSA, but his entire life, he was a small c communist in the tradition of Marx and Engels and all the greats.
When Laura called me and asked me to sing, I didn't know what we could do, because since 2002, knowing Clarence, I'd never known him to be religious, and we do gospel. So I was kind of stunned at what could we do. So I thought of a song that I think expresses Clarence as he was. Because I remember at times when we were talking, he would say he was not free unless his brothers were free. And he meant brothers all over the world. So it go to what one said earlier about it, injury to one is an injury to me, or injury to all. So we'll do a song that's called, what's the name of it? I got a short memory. I would like to know how it would feel to be free. I wish I could know how it feels to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things that I want to say. I'd say them loud, say them clear, for the whole wide world to hear. I wish I could share all the love that's in my heart. Remove all the bars that keep us apart. And I wish you could know how it feels to be me. Then you'd know and agree that every man should be free.
I think it's good to take the opportunity while honoring Clarence to honor Maggie, his partner for many decades in activism, because we have the chance to help her celebrate. And perhaps it's fitting tonight to celebrate a 91st birthday coming up in only days. So congratulations.
Okay, so about our family history, I met Clarence at the YCL office, Young Communist League office, when he came back from Spain. And he had an injured arm. He couldn't use his one arm. And he stayed with his sister who nursed him while he recovered. and I used to go visit him. And he would send every mail. The mail came twice a day in those days, and in every mail there was a love letter. It's really crazy because one day he says to me, "We got married, didn't we?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you remember anything about it?" And I remember real good because I was Irish Catholic, and I grew up in a family of 17 kids. He was a family of two rather, and he was a Jew. And the anti-Semitism at that point was so awful. We used to hear Father Kailin, who spoke to the working class. He spoke in a way that the working class paid attention. And he spoke about how dangerous the Jews were, how they were taking over the country. And he was so awful that the 4 younger sisters under me, we had to get away from that talk. I mean, it was on the radio every Sunday, and we had to listen. We couldn't stand it. All we heard was hate. Anyway, we got married with the help of his Jewish uncles. He took his car. He lent us his car, and we went to Iowa, where we could get married in a hurry, because we knew that my family was really against it, and they wanted to ship me off to the east to live with another sister. So we got married. I was dressed in a traditional jelly bean sweater and a black skirt and ankle socks with saddle shoes. And I think we had hot dogs for dinner. Then we went, when we got back, Clarence's family was very welcoming, and the grandfather of the person who was doing the refreshments was his wife made a wedding cake for us with a little bride and groom on it. That was our what do you call our reception. But they were very, very kind, and they helped us a lot. Clarence got a job as a cab driver for 10 cents. You could go anywhere in the city of Madison. So he made a lot of money, you know. We got acquainted with the neighborhood, and it was a very segregated neighborhood, even though it was a triangle. Even though it had a reputation as being very liberal, there was a lot of racism. And if you chose black neighbors, you did not get the help of a white neighbor. And so our main thing was, ever since that, then to do something about changing the racism in the schools, and about all the things that the police department and so forth. And I wanted to talk about the education we got from them. That was, I mean, we didn't just become wonderfully educated. It was our neighbors that taught us. We learned from them. This is what went into learning, to us learning, was to be involved in our neighbors, to know, listen to what people said, to get acquainted with somebody. And so I never think of Clarence as a superhero. I think anybody can do it. I think that we can't idolize people. Otherwise we put them on a different stage, and we excuse ourselves, when we do that. We don't strive to be the best we can be. So.
I'm Laurel Kailin, the second oldest, and I just wanted to say thank you to Karen, who returned one of my dad's books. If any of you have overdue books, and you can let me know if he has one of yours. I'll put this down. I'm not going to talk about politics. I'm just going to talk a little bit about my dad as my father. But first I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. And I just keep thinking Dad would be so happy to be here with you. And he's in spirit, but I'd rather he'd be sitting here listening. So thank you, and also thank you to those of you who found the time to go to St. Mary's and visit with him, or called him, or sent him letters. It meant a lot to him. And when he'd see people in public, he was so excited to see all of you in these past several years. So I just want you to know how much he appreciated your friendships. I started to write about my life growing up, and I realized that I'd have to write an autobiography. There are too many stories. So I'm just going to tell you a few things that you might not know about Dad. Did you know that he really wanted to be a farmer? And he almost bought a farm when this was in the 1950s, so there were 3 of us kids at that point. And he found a farm in Lodi that he was ready to buy, and we just were outraged at the thought of moving away from the Greenbush neighborhood, and we protested loudly, and so he never did become a farmer. But he really loved the outdoors. He loved to garden, and when we lived on Park Street, he had a beautiful, sprawling garden. Almost all of it was flowers, all of them planted from seed. And strangers would walk by our house and ask just to come in and look through our garden, because it was really beautiful. My mother filled the house with bouquets of flowers, so we always had lots of flowers around. And every night after work, Dad would come home and he would go out into the garden. He would work until dinner, and then he would be back out until dark. And every single year, he would ask me if I would like to garden with him. And every year, I spent about an hour out there, and then he was on his own. So.
I want to give you a couple of vignettes about Dad. But before I do that, I want to say something about his spirit. Not the spirit, not that ethereal thing, but the presence in his room tonight. In our obituary, there was one word that was missing, and yet that was the very word that describes more about him than anything else. He was a humble person. For a man of such scope, he didn't ask for fame and glory. He was simply a guy of few words who did his best and followed the ideals of brotherhood that inspired him and his fellow rank-and-file Marxists around the world. Now, don't get me wrong, he would complain that he didn't want another birthday party, he didn't want another award, but believe me, he loved to be honored. And I know that you gave him a couple of extra years with all those wonderful tributes. It was great for him. Who else? And I got to say, we are very grateful that such a guy would be active and vigorous right to the very end. Who else gets to attend his own funeral on his 95th birthday and listen to his tributes? We felt a torrent of emotion that was unleashed with his death in your letters and your emails. So honestly, there is not much I can add to tell you about Dad, really. You've already said it before. I just want to talk about our last moments with Dad before I tell you some of the things that he did with us. I got a call to come home quickly. My plane was just approaching Madison. What could I say to Dad when I got to his bedside? I said the words of a wise young man spoken at Dad's 95th birthday. You know him as Kamanzi. Dad, it's all one. It's all one, Dad. There is no life, there is no death, it's all one. You've just become an instant ancestor. And right about then, I felt Dad's presence float around me. When we landed, I learned that Dad had passed away. At the hospital, we sat with him for several hours, and he was as beautiful in death as in life. The next 5 days felt like years of loneliness. I felt totally left behind in a very empty space. Now, I know that what I experienced is not unique. All regular people have the same feelings on the death of a loved one. But I felt there was something especially magical about Dad. Like all the best people we know, only more so. As Neruda said, you have collected the strength of all those living.
I'm Clarence's oldest grandchild. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming. I have a confession to make. This week has been hard because I didn't want to come here. Part of me didn't want to come because I've said goodbye so many times since the day that he died. And coming here again is another goodbye, and that's really hard to say. But I guess I'm coming to understand the nature of grief, that we're never quite done saying goodbye. So thank you, everybody, and that's all I have to say.
Keeping with true Clarence Kailin fashion, you know he would have said, no disrespect to the organizers, why did we pick this stuffy place of worship to have this when it was a 60-degree day? We could have the ultimate socialist potluck outside today, right? Then my grandfather would have said, I'm glad everyone didn't wear black. Because he would have said, why does black always have to be a negative connotation with negative definitions? Why do people always wear black at funerals? You see what I'm saying? Then he would have said a couple other things. But one thing, I'm the second oldest grandchild after Jennifer. And the fight goes on. If you watch the YouTube, if you was at his birthday, one last things he said is, and what did he say? The struggle continues. There's a lot of work to be done. All right? Our youth are under attack right now. They're under attack from a lot of different ways. We have to get out with the youth and help the youth in every way possible. One thing Hitler did is Hitler made sure that he attacked and brainwashed the youth of Germany. Let's not let that happen again. Have we not learned from the mistakes? All right, another thing, we have to be proactive. All right, we can't be box revolutionaries. We can't sit on our couch and think it's going to happen overnight. Every day is a continuous struggle. This was the legacy of Clarence Kailin. You understand, overstand, and understand. In the African tradition, we don't deal with death. We just deal with life. Clarence Kailin now is an ancestor, so we say Ashe, Ashe. All right? Now, could everyone stand up? Is that too much to ask? If you're able to stand on 2 feet. We don't don't deal with organized religion. Karl Marx taught us that religion is the opium of the masses, but we deal with spirituality. The number 1 is the most important number in the numeral line because number 1 is the only number that mathematically is in every other number. Put a number 1 in the air for the oneness of humanity. One aim, one God, one race. There's no such thing as race, it's only the humanity, the human race. There's no such thing as black people, white people, red people, and yellow people. These are divisions in the caste system that comes out of white supremacy. You know, my grandfather was against all the isms, capitalism, racism, sexism, and all the poisonous isms. Likewise, my grandmother, a great woman who was his partner in rhyme for over 40, 50 years. There couldn't have been a Clarence unless there was a Maggie. There can't be yin without yang. There can't be right without left. There can't be up without down. You understand? Now, I'm going to just do something real quick. This is off the head. I don't know what to say. You know what to say. All right? It goes like this. Some of y'all voted for Obama. Some of y'all voted for McCain and Palin. Me, I would have voted for Lenin. VP, Clarence Kailin. You know how we do. And if you could put this right now, how could you define me and tag me? Who would have been my voice for the people, for education? None other than Maggie. Whether you're Irish or Jewish or black or Hebrew or this, it don't matter what color you are. It don't matter whose father you are, whose mother you are, whose sister you are, whose brother you are. As long as you're human, we under the stars. At the sound of the horn, I'll let the word fly. Open all of your chakras and your third eye. First I build with the planets, design a scheme. I unravel when I travel through a time machine. Call me a time traveler, right back to Africa. My rhymes are in line with the ancient Mayan calendar. And you can see me over there with Karl Marx reading the manifesto. I'm on the microphone right now, not here we go like presto. No, I'm not George Bush because I'm bushed out. Leave all the poverty-stricken people. No, we can't do that. They've been taken out. Who's looking out for us but you and me? It's I and I from Mount Zion High. Some of y'all salty and have high levels of iodine. In other words, it's chemical warfare. More panic, more static. This lyrical freestyle is considered organic, chemical free. And we can't forget about my auntie named Sue because she was a news reporter. Right about now, I'm a truth reporter. And if you hear me right now, to the youth, they slaughter. What are they doing to the daughters and sons? I don't understand that. I mean, this whole place should have been jam-packed with a lot of children. Right about now, I got to drop this. My grandfather would have been like, now, where's the socialist potluck? We got to have it right now in the park. But unfortunately, we got to do it till it gets dark. So am I a rapper, an MC? I'm just a humble, unknown vocalist. Am I a capitalist? I have to curse. Hell no, I'm a straight-up socialist. In other words, right now, this ain't no capitalism. I rap to the rhythm. In other words, break that down. If this is too fast, then I'll slow that down. Can you understand me right now? In Dolby sound. They're like, why do you wear fatigues? Because we at war. It's a mental state of war. When they try to get our youth on some nonsense and try to beat you conscience, I burn fire upon the Vatican, the White House, and the Congress. I don't pass no laws unless it's God's one natural law. And it's one earth, one aim, one God, one destiny. Clarence Kailin, one love you. It's only one energy. Peace. That's all I had to say.
The last day of my dad's life, Aziz and I decided to take him out in the country. It was Saturday, October 24th, and we originally were going to have him come over for dinner on Sunday. He usually came over once a week at our house. And it was a beautiful day on that Saturday, October 24th. Do you remember it? It was the last best beautiful day we've had. Today was pretty good too, but in any case, I called my dad up because I realized that we may not see another beautiful day again. So I called Aziz, he was working, and I said, is there any way you can stop what you're doing and let's get Dad to the country because we may never get him out to the country this winter, this fall. And I called him up and we went out to St. Mary's and picked him up, and we drove out to Spring Green. And I can't remember what I wrote here. But he kept talking all the time in the car, more than he normally does. Usually he doesn't talk too much. He has a stomach ache or he has some little ailment. But he talked a lot in the car that day. We were in the car about 2 hours. He said it was the most beautiful day he had ever seen. He talked about the leaves and the reds and the yellows and the oranges and talked about why were they so rich this year. And sometimes we would stop at a particularly beautiful tree and just park the car under it, and we would look at the colors. And he talked in all these superlatives. He just kept saying, "This is the most beautiful day I've ever seen." But he really thought that Ruth Doyle was very good. But he is very unhappy, as he told me a month ago today, with what his son is doing, trying to privatize education, putting it in the hands of the mayor of Milwaukee. Wow. If you can't clean up your sewage, I don't know how you're going to clean up your schools. But my dad was very concerned about that, and he was aware of it. We talked about that in the car. So anyway, he will always be with us.
So Miles might not speak too much. He's always been a bit shy, which is all right.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that we will both be able to share a few words about our great-grandpa. So first of all, I'm Desmond Hawkins. He's Miles Trelevin, but really deep down inside we're both Kailins. And we've always known that, and I think that no matter what your last name is, everybody here is a Kailin. And our great grandpa's legacy will live within everybody here, and definitely I'm going to try to, and Miles, and sorry if I can't speak for you, but I'm pretty sure that we're both going to try to help the world in understanding what our great-grandfather helped us realize. And just for so many years, everything that he's done, whether either of us have been born or not, has affected us, and I'm really glad that he lived to be able to do so many things, but also see so many things unravel in the world, see so much change happen, even though we have so far to go. But I think it's just spectacular that he was able to see our first black president get elected. I think that's just amazing. And what's really too bad is that he wasn't around to see our first socialist president get elected. But I'm sure whoever that happens to be, they will definitely speak of Clarence Kailin in their inauguration speech. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Would you like to say something?
No.
All right, well.
I didn't prepare anything because I have so many little memories that pop up that don't seem to form a cohesive narrative, but what comes to my heart, or what comes to me, is a kind of fearlessness about my father, and that he just wasn't afraid. I remember when he used to go, it was during the Vietnam War, and there were protests on campus, and I was a little kid, and there were National Guard on the streets, and I remember walking and seeing these bayonets, just in rows. And my father wanted to go there to take photos, and he took me with him. And he didn't ever sort of convey to me that he was afraid that I wouldn't be okay. He just kind of grabbed me, and we went, and we were in the car, and he was taking pictures, and there were stones, and there were all kinds of skirmishes between the police and the protesters, and he'd say, "Get down," and I'd get down on the seat, as something flew by the car, and he said, "Okay, you can get up now." And even I remember once when I was a kid, and
also, and there was some kind of a Nazi party thing that my parents went to, and I was just scared to death. I was at home alone, and I just waited for them, trembling, thinking something would happen to them. But that's the kind of thing he would do, would just go out to things like that. And I remember this is actually when he was in his 80s, and my niece had some sort of an accident in the winter. She ran into a ditch, and she called, and she said that there was some real thuggish guys that were intimidating her. And my dad said, "Let's go." And he got his jacket. I mean, here he wasn't, he's an old guy by then. Get his jacket on, and he got in the car, and he went right over there to confront those guys. And, just never occurred to him to be afraid.
The local cellist Michael Allen has a wonderful rendition for us of Song of the Birds, a Catalan folk song.
Clarence Kailin's world is possible, and tonight, in the warm memory of his heroism and his kindness, of his activism and his love of root beer, of his radicalism and his faith that socialism was not merely an ideology, but an expression of love for all humanity, let us commit anew. Let us make that lonely decision to sign up, as Clarence did, to be the heroic example of solidarity and the universality of democracy. Let us march. Let us struggle. Let us win, and let us build the just city. Let us live as Clarence Kailin did, and as Clarence Kailin always will, for justice, for peace, for sugar cookies and root beer, for love and solidarity. Venceremos, camarados, hasta la victoria siempre. For Clarence, for peace, for justice, comrades.